Hello everybody, it's Larry and welcome to today's video. This one is going to be a very interesting video. We're going to talk about the Shared Centimorgan tool, the new ball and pattern tool, and I'm going to announce another tool that I've never before talked about or demonstrated. Most of you probably haven't even seen it yet. And so we're going to talk about all of these. But before we do, I want to give special credit to, well, everything to Blaine Bettinger. Folks, this is the pioneer in genetic genealogy for everything that's free. You can't walk any direction in this field and not find where he's already put footprints in the snow, whatever direction you're going. He created, with the aid of Johnny Pearl, an online version of his brainchild, the Shared Centimorgan tool, which allows you to simply enter centimorgans and be able to get some clues and hints to finding your kinship. Now, I'm going to examine that tool in depth, and I'm going to, well, let's just go on to the next part. So what happened was, I took a DNA test from Ancestry, and I got a DNA surprise. My biological father was not my father, and that led to the creation of this channel because I went through a lot of things, and, as I said before, Blaine had already put this tool on the internet before I even knew what a centimorgan was, okay? Just to put things in proper perspective. So, and no, he doesn't even know about this. So if you're a friend of his, you can forward this to him. It is a most sincere appreciation because without his tool, I would not have found my biological father. And so with that, here's the tool, and it's the Shared Centimorgan Project 4.0. You see the V4 of that version, and you can see down there, on the left, you can actually see where it says, version 3.0 in 2017. So that was the version that I had. It didn't have histograms, and heck, I didn't even know what a centimorgan was, so I had to contact the company that sold the machine, because when I investigate something, folks, I get down into the dirt with it, and I wanted to know how the machines work. What's the margin of error? Is this actually a usable path, or am I wasting my time, going down and trying to use centimorgans to figure it out? And, talk with some engineers and found what I found. Well, this was the only tool, and for the most part is, now there's some other tools that are similar that other people have created, but this was and is still the de facto for what it does. But I don't think, at least I didn't then, understand what it was really showing me, and I think many of you don't as well. And so that led on my own to the creation of some other tools, which was the ball and pattern tool, and, well, I'm not going to tell you the other one. You'll have to watch the whole video to get the other in the link. Anyway, so let's talk about what the Shared Centimorgan tool is really doing. All right? So, whoops, wrong direction. All right, so the Shared Centimorgan tool, it asks for a given centimorgan. We're going to call that number value X. Kind of sound mathy and professional, right? What are and the questions are, the possible kinships for X, okay? And of those kinships, with X that's in the range for the low and high value, what are the most probable kinships? And that's what the Shared Centimorgan tool gives us back, and that's why it was so instrumental in helping me find my biological father. But, all right, as it says, it shows all the possible kinships by turning down the opacity on the kinships that do not have X within that range. And the most probable kinships for X, according to the central limit theorem, okay, will be those kinships whose mean are closest to the value of X. So it breaks these up and says, okay, it's got this huge database. Which ones are the most likely? We'll apply this math to it. Now, just so this is the central limit theory. It shows you, according to the law of large numbers, as you increase your sample size, or the number of samples, then the sample mean will approach the population mean. Okay, let me read the second one before I explain that. With multiple large samples, the sampling distribution of the mean is normally distributed, even if your original variable is not normally distributed. So what that means is, the more and more and more values you accumulate, then the answer for any given number of centimorgans will be close to the mean. All right? All right, that's really an important concept, because that's really kind of what it's showing. Well, not kind of, it is what it's showing you. So the closer it gets to the mean, that's the middle value, the closer the numbers get, okay, the more likely it is for that value. Okay, makes sense. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to enter a sample number, which was 212, which, many of us have, a 212. Some don't. Some have lower numbers. We'll talk about that. The results answer the questions for X as previously stated. It does not display the most likely kinship for X. Okay, that's important to distinguish because this threw me off. It does show the most probable kinships for a given X, but not the most likely kinships. Those are not the same thing. Okay? They sound like they're the same thing. Mathematically, even one might assume that they're the same thing, but they're not. They definitely are not. In fact, when I was using this tool, it took me 9 months to figure out, because again, a lot of the advanced tools that are out now, like the Ancestry, clustering, and stuff like that, it wasn't out then. And so, I'm doing this all by hand, just basically using this tool, the Shared Centimorgan tool, and just analyzing it and reanalyzing it. Well, the whole process took me 9 months. The last 2 months were waiting on somebody that I sent a kit to for the results to come back to identify which of three brothers, or to attempt to, which it did, which of the three brothers was my biological father. But I spent 7 months researching to get to that point. Of those 7 months, my misunderstanding of what is being represented here and what I believe you are misunderstanding misled me for at least half of that time. 3-4 of those 7 months. I was chasing down different rabbit holes than what I should have been looking at. And that's simply, well, A, because of my lack of understanding, and B, once they put out the histograms with each of the kinships, it just snapped. I knew exactly what they were displaying, and then it all made sense. Because I saw some anomalies, and I thought, well, maybe there's just, some errors here and there. It's a great tool. Let's go with it. It's not an error in the tool at all. It was an error in my understanding of what the tool does and represents to me, and probably an error in what you are thinking as well. All right. So the answers, okay, those kinships whose mean value is closest to X is what you're seeing here. Okay. Okay, so the answer to the questions were to show all the possible kinships by turning down the opacity, and then those kinships whose mean value is closest to X, 49%, 41%, 5%, and 5%. Now notice that in this 5% right here, 2 of these are 0. If you look right here, it says it's 0, and when we pop it up and we look at them a little bit later, well, 0 and 0, well, that's not 5%. So why is it putting 5%? Is it an error? No, it's because it's not displaying information the way you think it is or the way I thought it was. All right. So here we go. On the top left, you can see, here is the 212 kind of shrunk down to fit on the page. Okay, for the entered 212 centimorgans, we get the following results in the group of 49. So all these right here, they're in the 49%, are these charts. Now, these two are exactly the same. They're what you call reciprocal kinships. So for example, for every parent you have a child, for every grandparent you have a grandchild, for every niece or nephew you have an aunt or uncle. All right. So that's what it has here. It has half, great aunt, uncle. So you would also have a half great niece, nephew. All right. So those first two are reciprocal. So I only use one of the charts because the chart's exactly the same. All right, so here's the chart for those. Notice the mean for each group, okay? The mean of each group, which means the peak, all right? See right here, the peak, all right? Notice the peak value is next to the peak. So we'll look at this. See right here on this one, there's 212. It's exactly between 200 and 225. If you don't know, I'll move my cursor a little bit right here. All right, it's the top right histogram. 212, well, the exact middle is 212.5. If you added 200 and 225 and divided by 2, 212.5 with 9 to the left, 9 to the right. It's spot on. There's the peak, of it, and then it goes down, okay? And then right here, here's your peak, all right? There's 200 and 250. It's right there between the top two. Right here, there's the 200 and 250, and it's right between the top two, and 200 and 250, right in the top two. That's what this first grouping is representing, all right, that 49%. All right? It doesn't mean that they're 49% likely. Okay, different math question with different answers. All right, so in the second group, all right, so in the second group, which is 41% right here, we have the following. Now, notice that the 212 number in this is one standard deviation. So here's the peak, right? That's the mean. Now notice right here, we go down a little bit, all right? That's going to be the deviation. So here's the peak right here for this one. Now notice the 212 is over here, okay? So as we come down the peak, this is at the deviation. Here's our peak. We come over right in here, it's to the deviation. Here's our peak. We come down, here's the deviation. And here's our peak. We come down the slope. Now this one's kind of a high one, but we come down the slope here to right here between these two numbers, here, this one and this one, and that's one deviation away from the peak. That's your 41%. We're going to go on to the next group, and we're kind of going to display this one. This one's going to be a little bit more confusing, but we'll try and take them in an order that's less confusing. All right, notice the values here says 5%. And the first 5%, okay, it's two standard deviations. So we went to the one, here's the peak, it's one over, it's going to be much further down the slope. Here's the peak, all right? Here's a deviation right here, and then here's the second deviation. Here's the peak, here's the first deviation, here's the second deviation, way down the peak. Now this is where it kind of gets confusing, because you notice that these first two, it says the probability is 0. In fact, it is absolutely 0. So why is it even included? And that's because it meets the two standard deviations away. So here's your peak, right? Here's your first deviation. Here's your second deviation. Now notice to the right of the 212, it's a 0. All right, 200, 212. Now this one, really, you have to watch and pay attention here. This one is the peak. Right here is the standard deviation of 0, because remember, this is the peak. There's not very many values in this data set here. This is the peak, one deviation, but that's 150, and we're already at 0. So we come out to two deviations for this chart, and it's still 0. That's why it shows up, because the 212 is two deviations away. Here's the mean, one deviation, two deviations away. Here's the peak, here's one deviation, two deviations away would be where, it goes 125, 150, 175, 200, 225. So that it would be right over in here. If this chart continued, it goes 0, 0, 0, 0, but it's two deviations away. And that is very confusing. It's like, okay, why are there zeros in here? All right, so the shared centimorgan tool allows you to see all the possibilities for a given centimorgan value of x. Okay, that was the biggest help for me. So I saw all of them, and then I would start and I'd look, where was the mid-range or the mean closest to that value, and I would look there, which is exactly what it's showing you. But, okay, it also gives you groupings of percentages of likelihood that a given centimorgan is in a group. It does not tell you which is the most likely kinship for that given centimorgan. It's telling you, according to that central limit theorem, that the ones that are closest to the mean are the most likely. The problem is some of these other data sets have very small numbers, and so that kind of breaks the mold. All right, so we're going to use another one, and I'm going to show you, because most people, when they're trying to find biological families or break a wall, you're dealing with 50 centimorgans and sometimes even under. I'm going to use a 50 centimorgan, because it seems to me that when I get an email from MyHeritage, everybody seems to be between 45 and 55. It's just 50 is like the magic MyHeritage number. I don't know why. So when you get this, you don't know what to look at. Okay, so you've got 30% right here, 24% in here, 22% in here, 17% in here, 7% in here, and this is 0%, right? Okay, I'm going to show you that while this one is 0%, this one's not. And you better not think that the lower the numbers here, the less likely the kinship is. Because that is the mistake that I made when I was doing my research for my biological father. And it derailed me, because I thought that these were percentages of likelihood for these given kinships. Look up here. In the 24%, this one right here, 24%, we've got this right here. We've got 1, 2, 3 of them that are 0. Okay, it even says this is not going to be an answer. It's 0, 0, and 0 for these 3, but it's in the 24%. Why? Well, because the answer would fall within the standard deviation of it, but it's 0. So, and then of course this one down here says 0. So if you think these ones at the bottom are 0, wait until we see this one right here. So after a while, there was no histogram. I didn't know the data sets. And so I just had to go from top, the most percentages, down. It was the only thing I could do. I had not done the research and created some databases and done a lot of the things that I've done in the last couple of years, but I relied solely on the percentages that this tool has given me. And if you do that, it's going to derail you. Okay, it's going to send you in paths. Now, mathematically, it's 100% correct, and according to the central limit theorem, law of large numbers, it is absolutely correct. But it also can mislead you if, now they have the histograms. You click on it and it's very apparent. Now you may have to click on every one of those to see which one, but you can do that, all right? I've done that. And so I'm gonna show you some examples. So right here, what I've done is this is group 1, that's the 30%. You see half third cousin once removed, half second cousin 2 times removed, second cousin 3 removed. That's what's in this group. And this is how many of the data points hit right on there. So half third cousin, there were 117. Third cousin once removed, 1,686. Half 2C2R, 29. 2C3R, 60. Then in the second group, you notice that these 3 are zeros. Okay, this is what we talked about before. There's absolutely no possibility. It's not it, but it shows up in 24%. So, before I realized that, I got to check these out. All right. And so here's, 6 cousin is 60, 9, 80, 217, 49, 3, 5, 26, 8. That's in group 2. Now we come over here to group 3, which is 22%. It has 330. Well, that's larger than any number in group 2. This fourth cousin, the number is higher than any of these. So why is it down here? That goes back to the deviations. All right, we come to the next group, group 4, right here. Group 4, the 17% group. Look at third cousin, 1,311. The second largest number out of the entire set is down here in the 4th grouping. Okay, is that an error? No, because for a third cousin, there are other numbers that are more appropriate for it. Okay, so we come here, look at this, 408. That's more than any in these 2 groups above and only 1 above this. So here's the number 2, and this looks to be number 3 or 4 overall. Well, we see this 500 here, so I know it's going to be 4. And so what I did is I took these numbers in all the groups, okay, and you can verify this. Just click on right here, click on like half third cousin. Whoops, it advanced me on. If you click on it, it will actually pop up the histogram, and you can see what number is above the number 50, which is what we're using in this for that. So what I did is I took all these and reordered them from high to low. 1,686, 1,311, 500, 408, 330. Now notice the groups that they're in. This is in group 4, group 5, group 4, group 3, group 2, group 4, group 1, group 3, group 2, group 1, some group 2s, group 5, 1, 3, 2, 5, 5, 5, 4, 6. Right here in group 6. Remember that one that this right here says 0%? Well, this has a 9, which puts it right here as the 20th most likely out of all those out of 32. Okay? So it's in the top 66 percentile, even though it shows 0. So that was confusing to me, and I'm sure it's confusing to you. You may have to watch this again, start at the beginning to the part you got confused, run through it, because you really need to understand this, because this tool is great if you know what you're looking for. So what I did then, and for the purpose of this video, is I took these numbers right here in order, and I overlaid the highlighted probabilities. Now I didn't do them all because it cluttered it up, but I did take the top 8. Okay, so from here up, so number 1 was third cousin once removed. All right, third cousin once removed, and the next one was third cousin, so that's number 2. Number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8. So that is really the order that I believe that I should be looking at. Now, that threw me, and the more and more I helped people, then the more and more I needed to do that. Well, I didn't want to click on the histograms every single time. And so, because I had created the ball and pattern tool and started bringing in data sets that are different than the shared Centimorgan tool, but still close, pretty close, it closely resembles it. But mine does deal with the multipathing on the ball and pattern tool. I created a new tool. So here it is, your first look, first announcement of the kinship identification tool called KinID. So what you do is really simple. You just enter the centimorgans of the DNA match from your DNA match list. And what it's going to do is it's going to pop up the chart of the likely kinships. Now, what I did is I wanted to show you how it is similar. It is also a bit dissimilar, like I said, because mine's taken in some multipathing factors and using, different data sets. But for the most part, look at the first 11 right here. The first 11 numbers, which get you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So to right here, from here up, it's exactly the same type of results as what you got here. So these numbers here aren't the same, but they're in the same order as it is over here. Now right here, these are from the shared Centimorgan tool. They have the sixth cousin with 60. I don't have sixth cousin at all. And the reason for that is kind of in line with Ancestry's concept on timbering. Once you get that far out to the sixth cousin, it's more likely that you're going to have multiple segments from multiple paths add up to that. And for the ball and pattern tool and stuff like that, I just don't feel that that's a realistic thing. Although I do account for it in the ball and pattern tool, but this tool is really to say, okay, what order should I be looking for this kinship? I got a 50 centimorgan. I need to be looking, start here and work down in this order. Not this order. Well, I'm not going to say not this order. This is the order from the shared centimorgan tool. This is a different order through the KinID. The first 11 in this case are identical as far as the order. Now, I don't know if the percentages are the same or not, but the order in which they are the same here. Now, here's two more that are there. This one is not. This one, half second cousin, twice removed. That is right here. I have that as 0.6% likelihood. All right. And so you see this one. This one is a big anomaly. Before that, let's talk. The ones in red are the ones that are different. And then you can see from about 17 on, it's completely different. But in this one, it's different, but notice it's still in black. Second cousin once removed. The shared Centimorgan tool has 9 in its database, but if I look for second cousin once removed, or half second cousin once removed, sorry, half second cousin once removed, if I look for half second cousin once removed, it's actually the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, seventh most likely in my data set. Okay, it's 21st most likely in the shared Centimorgan tool. They've got a 9. Mine, because it's 50, I've got it higher up because of the multipathing. All right, so that's the difference here. Now, you may or may not have heard yet of the ball and pattern tool. This is another tool that I created, and you can see that the chart here for 50 is the same. The ball and pattern does a couple of things that are coordination. Is different than what the shared Centimorgan tool is. This factors in your age, and so gives you a probability map. So if you are older, then this map slides down. If you're younger, the green area slides up to tell you where you should look. And so for 50 centimorgans, the person, this is my age at 58, I should be looking in this green area for the answer. The answer is going to be in this green area. It's going to be in that green area. Here's that chart that you see that came from like the KinID that's integrated with the ball and pattern tool. You can click on it, so you can just enter the centimorgan, do this, or if you want to, look at a bunch of them and just use the KinID tool, you can use it as well. All right. All right. So does the ball and pattern tool and the KinID replace the shared centimorgan tool? No. Heck no. No, it's totally different, and it's another tool in the toolbox. There are additional new tools in our toolbox. I think of like Watto, I think of it as a hammer. And I think the Shared Centimorgan tool is like a screwdriver. And I think the ball and pattern tool is like a saw. Now, you can come over and use, the hammer and the screwdriver and cut it, cut a board, a 2x4, cut it. It's going to be a jagged edge. You want a saw. Now, for other things, you don't want a saw. If you're wanting to screw into something, a saw is not a good tool for that. All right. And then I think of the Kin ID tool as a socket wrench, okay, which is great, for putting nuts on the end of bolts and things like that and tighten it down. But it's terrible for a screw. It doesn't cut wood hardly at all. It's a different tool. Each of these things, the Watto, the Shared Centimorgan tool, the ball and pattern tool, the Kin ID tool, they all do different things. Okay, so now they look the same. You enter centimorgans and it performs, different math on different sets of information to give you, new clues on to do it. Each one gives you new things. So, finding the probabilities, they got different data sets. And because none of us have the data sets that say Ancestry has, or that MyHeritage has, or FTDNA, or even GEDmatch, then we're estimating, we're doing formulas and more formulas and taking what data we have and extrapolating information. So which one's the most accurate? We don't know. And to be honest, Ancestry, with the largest data set at all, with 20 million people, they don't know. Okay, that's why they do timbering at under 90 centimorgans and do weighted in order to estimate some of the stuff like I'm doing with the multipathing, but they don't know, even with the huge data set of 20 million people. It's an estimate because there's 7.2 billion people on the planet, and so they can only extrapolate with the 20 million in their data set. Okay? All right, so on to the next one. The Shared Centimorgan tool can be found at dnapainter.com/tools/sharedcmv4. Okay, and the CM Centimorgan V4 version 4. The ball and pattern tool can be found at dnafamilytrees.com/bp/index v8html, and it is case sensitive on that one. It's on a Linux machine, so you do have to have capital V or it'll bark. You can actually go to dnafamilytrees.com and get links for both of those off of the main page. The Kin ID tool can be found also at dnafamilytrees.com/bp/kinid. All right, .html. All right, so there you have it. If you have any questions, put them down in the link below. Check out the new Kin ID tool. I think that it will help you tremendously. I think that while it's a different data set, like you saw in the example, the first 11 numbers were very, very similar as far as the order. And so looking at the percentages, now the Shared Centimorgan tool may have different percentages the same. I don't know. I didn't take that tool, didn't use that data, so I don't know. I guess I could tell you the exact variance. I'll let you or somebody else do that. But again, it is different. It does display that same type of information based on the centimorgans differently. And for me, when I was searching for my biological family, I want to know, based on, let's go back up, that's why I created the ball and pattern tool. I wanted to know what's the most likely MRCA so that I could build the tree down, not waste a lot of extra time building trees in the wrong spot. So just quickly on how to use this, if you use the Kin ID tool or just in the ball and pattern tool because it has the chart here, you can see this one is most likely, okay? And this one being the third cousin, which is right here. That is the most likely for me for a 50 centimorgan match. And then if I look at the next one, I'm gonna look down here at third cousin once removed is my next most likely. And then second cousin once removed. Well, all three of these are the most likely, and all three of these come right up here and match at the second great grandparent. This is what the ball and pattern tool is for, is to help you identify your MRCA, where your intersecting node is. So I want to be building out, either if I'm looking for a biological parent, then I'm going to build from their position up to second great grandparent all across the board, and then build down until I find people that cluster with them on one of those branches. If I'm looking to break down a wall, then I'm going to be looking at my second great grandparent and building down in order to match them, to identify those lineages so that I can cluster them and break down, that wall. Again, you notice here, you find the MRCA easier with this than any other tool. You still need clustering to help get that answer. Whether you're using the Leeds method from Dana Leeds, or whether you're using the ancestry grouping or a method of your own, you still have to do that in conjunction with any of this information. Again, it's just another tool in the toolbox. And the KinID tool is for those who kind of want to power search and say, hey, I've got a good tree for me. They've got a pretty good tree. Where should I look? Okay, how are they most likely connected? They're most likely connected at third cousin once removed. All right, and to be honest, the ball and pattern tool is where I would work from. It's the one that I think is really kind of the go-to for this, because you get the ability, you can click on the charts and blow them up into another tab, move that over to look at it whenever you want. Just looking at it from here to see which one, it's all kind of together. All right. The problem that some people have with the ball and pattern tool is, it does bring on everything in here in red. That's multi-path connections. Yellow is dual path connections, and blue is single path connections. And that's kind of a new concept. People are saying, hey, that's my half cousin or my full cousin. And, I used to be one of those people. But after doing more and more research, I realized that was hindering me greatly in finding the answer. It was multipath. In fact, I dealt with somebody today that, I get this literally every day. Somebody has an unusually high centimorgan match for a cousin, and they've identified the MRCA, and because it's so much higher than what it should be, it's often indicative of a multipath. And so the ball and pattern tool, it's in beta. Check it out. It's in the link shown right here. The KinID tool, it's in full form. It's not beta. It's ready. You go use it. The ball and pattern tool, while it is in beta, it's still pretty much in full form. What we're doing is we're tweaking. Somebody, just today asked me for a reset that did not reset the age value and the overlay for the probability, because doing that for every centimorgan that they had was kind of a pain, and I agreed. So I added the centimorgan only reset just today, and so you're getting this, fresh as of today. But I'm still evolving this in order to help people, and so as people are using it, they're giving feedback. Check out the tool. It's actually, the link's in the previous video. I'll put it in this one too. Check it out if you have some feedback on it. Folks, just remember that the Shared Centimorgan tool, it's a great tool. I owe the fact that I found my biological father 100% to Blaine Bettinger. If I ever go to a conference and he's there, I do intend to shake his hand, thank him personally, and if he's available, buy him a dinner or a lunch or whatever, at least a coffee or something, because if it hadn't been for him selflessly working hard, with Johnny Pearl to get that out on the website and their coordination with Leah, then, at the DNA Geek, then it never would have been out there for me to see. And yeah, some people might say, well, Larry, you're kind of complaining that you wasted 3 months. No, I don't think that at all. I found the answer. I found it using that tool. Now that I'm helping others do that over and over, I realize that, hey, this tool isn't exactly what I thought it was. It's still a great tool. It found my biological father. I was able to use it and whiteboard and do math and research and look in the areas, and I did find it. Now, to be fair, the second time that I had to use the DNA Painter was when my mother, I realized she had a DNA surprise, and I was able to solve it in about 2 hours. I think it was about two and a half. Okay, because I knew exactly where to look, because I'd done this so much. But then that is what led me to develop this, because if I'd have had this, I would have probably been able to look at it and go, oh, it's here, check on it, validate it, and be done in probably inside 30 minutes. But that's simply because I've used this so much and I understand what it's doing for me. It helps find the MRCA. The other helps define all of the kinships. And then the KinID tool, which you can see in the ball and pattern up at the top right, up here, this chart, then that gives you the likelihood that any given centimorgan is that. And so taking this, combining it with this pattern really points out. And then later, this will be, do you want an MRCA projection? And you're going to click on that button, and it's actually going to circle the most likely MRCAs. So the tool's being evolved, should be done by the end of the year. It's in beta now. Check them all out. Hope you enjoyed the video. Links are right here and also down in the description below.